Have you ever considered how much of your distress stems from your obsession with control? I'm not just referring to external control, your job, finances, schedule, but internal control. That desperate need for guarantees, to know precisely what the future holds, to have a perfect grasp of who you are, what you desire, and where you are headed. Society has conditioned you to hunt for definitive answers as if existence were a solvable puzzle. But the reality, a truth that few dare to confront, is that this fixation on certainty pulls you further from what you truly crave: peace. You might be weary, drained from attempting to forecast the unforeseeable, from creating flawless plans that shatter with the slightest whisper of chance. Perhaps you are adrift in the void of anxiety, where each uncertainty feels like a menace, where the unknown appears as a foe to be vanquished. But what if uncertainty itself isn't the issue? What if the true venom is your refusal to embrace it? Michel de Montaigne, a 16th-century French philosopher, grasped this long before the rest of us. While the world around him pursued rigid doctrines, absolute truths, and closed belief systems, he did something remarkable. He turned his gaze inward. He examined his own mind, his anxieties, his contradictions, and had the courage to write about it all with unsparing honesty. He wrote not as someone with the answers, but as someone who learned to live more gracefully with the questions. And that is what you need right now. Not more certainties, but a new way of relating to the uncontrollable. In this video, I want to offer a different approach, a lighter yet far more courageous way to meet life. I want to demonstrate through Montaigne's wisdom that when you cease resisting the unknown, something shifts. Anxiety's hold weakens, the pressure subsides, and for the first time in a long while, life starts to feel simpler. But take note, this simplicity doesn't arrive from the outside. It isn't a change in your world. It's an internal revolution, and it begins the moment you decide to release your grip, to abandon the fantasy of control, and to walk with me, not toward answers, but toward a new way of existing in the world. Are you prepared? Because this journey, unlike anything you have been taught, starts with a single admission: I do not know, and that is all right. Montaigne was not a typical philosopher. He didn't preach from podiums, construct intricate theories, or attempt to shoehorn the world into logical formulas. He wrote from inside his own experience. Seated in his library, enveloped by books and quiet, Michel de Montaigne set out to explore the most volatile and mysterious subject in existence: himself. His writings are not treatises. They are reflections. He didn't write to persuade you, but to prompt you to think, to question, to doubt, to look within yourself without hesitation, or rather, in spite of it. Unlike other thinkers who sought universal principles, Montaigne embraced the reverse. He didn't know. And the longer he lived, the more he understood that knowing little about the world, and even less about himself, was not a deficiency. It was a profound wisdom. "What do I know?" he famously asked. Not as a challenge, but as a point of departure, because for him, admitting ignorance was not an intellectual failing. It was a form of liberation. It meant dropping the pretense, taking off the masks. It meant shedding the weight of having to be someone correct, whole, and unassailable. The modern era rejects such humility. We live in a time that demands an opinion on everything, a position on every issue, certainties as unbending as steel. But Montaigne presents the opposite, the opportunity to be human before being ideological. He saw that our vulnerability, our uncertainties, our inconsistencies are not flaws to be eliminated, but vital components of what makes us truly alive. And maybe that is precisely what you need to hear today. That you no longer have to defend false certainties to feel worthy, that you don't need to know everything to keep going, that it is okay to be a work in progress. Montaigne gave himself permission to change his mind. He contradicted himself. He acknowledged that what he believed yesterday might not be true today. He understood the fluid nature of the human mind, which shapes, adjusts, and transforms. And rather than fighting this current, he welcomed it with gentleness, with humor, with wonder. He knew that living well is not about conquering the world with rigid ideas, but about navigating it with an open mind and a perceptive heart. And that is what makes Montaigne so vital now. In an age where everyone shouts, he whispers. In an age of hard convictions, he demonstrates the lightness of doubt. And if you are feeling lost, burdened by the pressure to be someone consistent, defined, and unchanging, perhaps what you need is not more direction, but more freedom. The freedom to evolve, to not know, to simply exist. But Montaigne doesn't just invite us to doubt, he cautions us about the cost of running from it, because the more we attempt to control life, the more pain we create. And that is exactly what we are going to explore now. The silent agony that is born from the desperate effort to control the uncontrollable. If this message is resonating with you, click the subscribe button and join the channel. Your support is appreciated. You try to manage everything, don't you? The future, how others react, your career path, your body, your emotions, even things that are completely out of your hands. And the more you tighten your grip on the reins of life, the more it eludes you. It's like trying to hold water in your fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Have you ever stopped to consider the price you pay for this? This obsession with control is not merely exhausting, it is poisonous. It makes you a captive of unrealistic standards, a constant auditor of everything that might go wrong. And this has a name: anxiety. Anxiety, at its root, is the fear of what is unpredictable. It is the yearning for guarantees in a world that provides none. Most people exist in this perpetual state of high alert, trying to anticipate every bend in the road, as if doing so could prevent the accidents of the soul. But Montaigne knew something that modern psychology would only validate centuries later. Trying to live by predicting the future is to live in a state of conflict with reality. You see, human suffering doesn't arise solely from what befalls us. Frequently, it arises from our pointless struggle against what is happening. It is the demand for life to be other than what it is. It is the rejection of the natural course of events. Montaigne wrote about this with a disarmingly direct honesty. He accepted his sorrows, his losses, his uncertainties not as things to be eradicated, but as integral features of existence. And in doing so, he released himself from the weight of resisting everything. Have you ever noticed that the most controlling people are often the most tense, the most worn out, the most rigid? They can't relax because they believe that if they are not constantly in charge, something terrible will happen. But this belief doesn't protect, it cages. Montaigne, in contrast, suggested a deliberate surrender, not a cowardly defeat, but a brave acceptance that the world does not answer to you and that your mind must learn to flow, not to command. And herein lies the cruel paradox. The more you try to control, the more frustrated you feel. And the more frustrated you feel, the more you believe you need control. It is a self-perpetuating cycle that consumes you. And what is the ultimate gain? A tense body, a depleted mind, and a soul devoid of peace. Montaigne points to another way. A good life is not about managing everything. It is about knowing how to coexist with what you cannot manage. But how is this done in practice? How do you learn to live with the unpredictable without becoming lost in it? The answer is found in Montaigne's own approach to life. The consistent practice of self-reflection, not as a cold analysis of oneself, but as a ritual of profound internal listening. While the world clamored for certainties, Montaigne retreated into silence to observe what was within him. And what he discovered was not instant clarity, but a maelstrom. Contradictions, fears, muddled desires, strange impulses, all the things most people prefer to conceal or deny, he chose to face directly, but not as a judge, rather as a listener. Montaigne's great brilliance was not in creating theories about the human psyche. It was in having the audacity to become a living laboratory of the human experience. He turned himself into his own subject of study, and his writing became a mirror. In his essays, he does not write as someone instructing, but as someone sharing a journey. He thinks on the page and invites his reader to do the same. He didn't want to mold minds. He wanted to set them free. By chronicling his own doubts, his most private urges, his shifts in opinion, and even his moments of frailty, Montaigne reveals something revolutionary. You do not have to be right all the time. You just have to be present with yourself. This practice of continual self-observation, without filters and without a facade, is one of the most profound forms of self-awareness there is. But be warned. Observing yourself is not about berating yourself with criticism. It is about learning to look inward with both honesty and compassion. It is about recognizing when you are trying to fool yourself, when you are pretending to know something you do not, when you are forcing yourself to uphold an image that no longer fits you. Montaigne wrote to break free from these chains. He famously said, "I am human, and I think nothing human is alien to me." In essence, everything that lives within you, no matter how confusing or uncomfortable, is a valid part of who you are. And do you know the most powerful outcome of this practice? It dissolves shame. When you start to observe yourself with sincerity, you see that much of your suffering is born from the attempt to be an idealized version of yourself, from striving to meet an unrealistic standard of emotional, intellectual, or moral perfection. Montaigne reminds us that we are not marble statues. We are changeable, flawed, and beautifully imperfect beings. The simplicity we yearn for begins when we stop waging war against our own nature. And here is a powerful insight. This acceptance is not passive. On the contrary, it is the first step toward any genuine transformation, because only those who see themselves clearly can change authentically. Only those who embrace their own shadow can walk toward the light. But there is another crucial layer to this journey, because even if you begin to observe yourself, you still must contend with something unavoidable: change. Nothing in you, in others, or in the world stays the same. And until we understand this truth and learn to live with it, we will continue to suffer. This is what we will discuss now. If what you're hearing speaks to you, you will find immense value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It demystifies Jung's core concepts and provides tools for deeper self-understanding. The link is in the pinned comment. Most people live as if life should follow a straight path, as if one day, after gaining certain knowledge, stability, or success, everything will finally settle. As if there is a final destination where change ceases, where emotions stabilize, where doubts vanish, and everything makes sense. But this fantasy, sold to us by religions, schools, gurus, and even corporate culture, is precisely what separates us from reality and from peace. Montaigne perceived this with extraordinary clarity. He knew that everything in life moves in a constant flow. Our thoughts shift. Our bodies age. People enter and leave our lives. Our desires transform. Our certainties crumble. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is final. And to try to live as if it were, as if life should be predictable, unchanging, and controllable, is to sow the seeds of frustration, suffering, and emotional breakdown. Change is not an anomaly. It is the essence of existence. And the more we fight it, the more rigid, bitter, and detached from the present moment we become. Montaigne accepted his own changes as part of his humanity. He knew that being inconsistent at times was a sign of development, that changing your mind was a sign of courage, that releasing an old belief, even for another equally uncertain one, was a step toward clarity. Constancy itself is nothing but a more sluggish movement, he provocatively wrote. For him, living well was not about clinging to a static identity, but about dancing with impermanence. Have you ever noticed how many of your fears are tied to the prospect of change? The fear of losing someone, the fear of losing a job, the fear of things being different. But what if, instead of fighting it, You began to welcome these transformations as part of the natural rhythm of life, as Montaigne did. What if you stopped seeing every transition as a failure and started viewing it as an evolution? Accepting change is not about being passive. It is about ending the battle against the current of reality. It is learning to ride the wave instead of trying to contain the ocean. The lightness that so many desire doesn't come from forced stability, but from inner flexibility, from the capacity to let go, to adapt, to be reborn. Montaigne understood this far ahead of his time, and perhaps you are starting to understand it now, but recognizing that change is natural doesn't solve everything. We must know how to navigate this instability from within, how to ground our existence in the middle of doubt, chaos, and the unknown without losing our minds. This is where philosophy becomes practical and where Montaigne shows us a way forward. The cultivation of mental habits, of internal rituals that help us live better with uncertainty. Philosophy is useless if it doesn't apply to real life. Montaigne knew this. His writings are not abstract theories, they are tools for living. He didn't write to impress scholars, but to figure out how to cope with the fear of death, with sorrow, with insecurity, with a body that ages, with a mind that falters. And perhaps the greatest legacy Montaigne left us was this very idea, that thinking is an act of survival, that reflecting on your own life is a way to learn to live it with more bravery and less pain. But how precisely does one live with uncertainty? It isn't merely a matter of acceptance. It is a continual practice, a re-education of the mind. And this demands discipline. Not discipline in a rigid militaristic sense, but in the sense of a deep commitment to your own freedom. Because living well with uncertainty is a daily exercise. Here are some of Montaigne's principles that can genuinely transform how you approach life. First, interrogate your certainties. Whenever you feel 100% sure of something, pause, observe, and reflect. Absolute certainty is often a mask for fear, a defense against the discomfort of not knowing. Montaigne did exactly this. He doubted even his own convictions, not from insecurity, but from wisdom. He knew that the most dangerous belief is the one that refuses to be questioned. Second, make self-inquiry a ritual. Write. It doesn't matter if it is a journal, a letter you will never send, or a random note. Transferring your thoughts to paper is a powerful method for making your troubles visible. Montaigne wrote thousands of pages about himself, not from vanity, but to understand himself, to bring order to his inner chaos, to make his own mind a more habitable place. Third, embrace impermanence as a guiding principle. Make plans, certainly, but know how to abandon the plan when life shifts, because it will shift. True strength is flexibility. Instead of depending on brittle certainties, learn to move with grace. Adapt, recalibrate, reinvent yourself. Montaigne said that the wisest person is the one who knows how to change along with the things that change. Fourth, cultivate humor about your own imperfections. Yes, laugh at yourself. Montaigne did not take himself too seriously, and that is what made him so profound. He laughed at his own contradictions, poked fun at his anxieties, and was ironic about his vanity. Humor is a way to avoid being crushed by your own expectations. It is a way of saying, I am human, and that is perfectly fine. Finally, set aside moments of silence to be with yourself without any distractions. No phone, no external input, just your own presence. Solitude was Montaigne's greatest collaborator. Not for the sake of isolation, but for clarity. It is in the quiet that you hear what you truly think. It is in the pause that the mind recalibrates. And it is in that inner space that uncertainty stops being a threat and becomes fertile ground for new possibilities. But all of this, as potent as it is, only has meaning when you grasp the true reward behind the practice. Freedom. The freedom to be who you are without needing to possess all the answers. the freedom to live with a light heart, even when nothing is certain, the freedom to belong to yourself. And it is with this very theme, the inner freedom born from embracing doubt, that we will conclude this journey. Because Montaigne didn't just want you to endure the chaos. He wanted you to dance with it. In the end, everything you tried so desperately to manage was, from the very beginning, beyond your control. Life was never meant to fit neatly into your emotional spreadsheets or to follow your idealized timeline. People will let you down. Plans will go awry. Feelings will fluctuate. And none of this is a mistake. It is simply the way things are. Montaigne understood this with an almost piercing clarity. He saw that suffering comes not from change itself, but from our resistance to it, from our refusal to accept that life is a current, not a fixed structure. When you embrace uncertainty, something shifts, not in the world around you, but within you. Rigidity starts to soften. Anxiety loses its purpose. You stop fighting against what is and begin to move with what arises. This is not resignation, it is wisdom. It is emotional maturity. It is freedom. The freedom to live without the weight of having to comprehend everything. The freedom to not need a name for every emotion, a reason for every pain, a correct path for every decision. Life does not ask for your perfection. It only asks for your presence. The simplicity we chase is not external. It is not found in a life without challenges, in a flawless routine, or in a perfectly mapped-out future. It is found in the moment you grant yourself permission not to know. In the moment you say, with honesty and courage, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Because it is in that space of humility that true peace is born. The peace that is not reliant on circumstances. The peace that radiates from within. Montaigne taught us that by accepting our own ignorance, we become more human and more free. And if you have come this far, if this message has struck a chord within you, it is because a part of you is ready to let go of the burden of control, ready to breathe more freely, ready to live more authentically. So tell me, what part of you still fights the unknown? What do you feel when you look toward the future and see no definitive answers? Comment below. Share how this reflection has affected you. I read every comment with care, and be assured someone else will see themselves in your experience. This kind of exchange is powerful, and if this journey has been meaningful for you, I invite you to continue. The next video is important, very important, and it will go even deeper into the conversation we've started here. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and most importantly, do not stop now. You have already taken the first step. Keep moving forward because this path is yours.